Setting up shop.
Well, hello everyone, and welcome back again to Setting Up Shop. It's another episode of probably your mediocre standard halfway in list of podcasts. Certainly not favorite, I'm sure. If we are your favorite, that's great. Tell us on all of the places that you listen and leave a comment and send us messages and reassure us, because we are needy people. We are creatives who need to be absolutely reassured that what we're doing is good and appreciated and you know, all of those lovely things. I'm sure this doesn't resonate with any of you whatsoever. So today, who is with me? Today, as always, I'm joined by Rasmus Loen, the blacksmith from Norway.
Hello.
And also Heidi Jacobs, the potter from America.
Hey there.
And also, randomly, we have an extra guest. Yes, we have a guest episode. We have Tony Rouleau from America as well.
Howdy, howdy.
Hello, Tony. We'll get into a bit more of what Tony does for those of you who aren't aware of who he is and what he does, which is possibly some of you, particularly those mysterious people we keep seeing that are listening in Japan or Singapore who have still not told us who they are, or if it's just someone using a VPN just to wind us up. Either way, it would be really nice to know. So please do get in contact with us. We just like people to talk to us, is basically what we're saying. We're just kind of feel a bit lonely every now and then, and we like to receive emails. Unlike the email that I received this week that claimed it wasn't AI generated, but had an AI generated image and was very much telling me about how much they loved our podcast and how they could help. But anyway, Tony, welcome to the fold, Tony. We know you've been a listener for a while.
Yes.
Very much.
Yep.
It's not obligatory for anyone who is going to be interviewed on the show, but it helps.
Well, it was interesting because I've been making tools for about 10 years now and a little over. And the summer, I think you guys started in like August or September, maybe. It was the summer that I started. I left my full-time job the 1st of July. And I rolled in. I knew Heidi and Rasmus from, the maker community. I hadn't met Daniel yet, and so naturally I listened. And there was like, I think it's called the Dunning-Kruger effect, where when you start something, which I was truly starting my business then. I mean, I was doing things part-time, but this was the rubber hitting the road, and I had to be the breadwinner, pay the mortgage, and all this. So, you guys had just real quick, you had a thing about how much time you spend working on your products. And I'm like, what? No, I go downstairs and I just work 9-10 hours a day. And then as this juggernaut started to churn and I would look into more and more things, like actually I had a website, but it wasn't like, it was just kind of cheesy. And it's just, now it's like, clerical and all that stuff is like my major roadblock. And it was just interesting to roll into that. And then that knocked me down a peg. And it's like, no, this is part of doing business. And it's kind of, your guys' podcast is kind of just rolled alongside of what I've been doing. So I've been a fan for quite a while.
Oh, thanks.
That's amazing. I hadn't quite correlated the two together. So that's really cool. So yeah, as you've kind of mentioned there, for those of you who won't know, so we'll Tony, if you want to follow him, you should follow him now anyway, because the things he makes are beautiful. On Instagram, it's Hillview_tool, all lowercase. If you don't follow him already, and we'll mention that again at the end.
There's also links in the description.
Of course, there'll be links in the description. I've never doubted you for a second, Rasmus.
Thank you.
I was aware that obviously this was something that you'd done for a while as a hobby, and that you were then taken that step to actually be able to go full time. So the things that you make are predominantly, I'm from what I remember and see and always look at, are woodworking tools. So hand planes from scratch, from blocks of metal and exotic hardwoods and squares and levels and sliding bevels and that kind of stuff.
Yes.
Yep. Yeah. And I really like on your website, you've got a little tagline there, which is just 3 words, which explain everything about what you do, which is custom heirloom tools.
Yep.
And I think that's definitely a thing that, when we've spoken on various times on different episodes and things about, the whole thing of finding your niche and what is it that you're selling that's different from everyone else. And I think it's fascinating for you to be in that situation where you can say, oh yeah, well, I can make a hand plane from scratch out of metal and wood, and I can charge what it should be valued at, for that piece of work because it is unique. It is kind of your design and one-off and everything, but it's ergonomic at the same time. And it's some people I know collect them just to have them, and other people actually use them, which is what they're designed for.
Yep. I have a story where I had a gentleman buy a plane, and I got an email like a year and a half later from him. And I'm like, oh no, something's wrong with the plane. He's like, I finally took it out of the box and used it. It's amazing. And I'm like,
A year
thanks,
later,
buddy,
you
good
finally
job,
used
you know?
it.
And yeah, it was well over a year. And so and then there's people that like the best things I will see is like a tool of mine that's just patinaed, and like one of the best pictures I've ever seen is one of my block planes was sitting on a workbench, and there's just 2 shiny spots where you can tell someone's hands were, and the rest of it just patinaed nice. And that's just, it shows that tool's being used.
Yeah.
Because I'm professionally trained machinist, so that like tools are, it's a big thing. Usually machinist tools are extremely high quality, but they're meant to be used. And that's what I don't want to have gimmicky stuff. And I try to make things that are just workhorses, but look really nice. Like Rasmus.
Well, thank you. Ish, maybe. I don't know. I have one of your squares though. And in the beginning, I felt kind of bad about not having a proper place of storing it. But then visiting you, I guess it's nearly 3 years ago or something.
Yeah.
And talking to you about like exactly this, like you want to see it kind of gnarled up and used. I was like, okay, good. I feel less bad now. But then now it's also been nearly 3 more years and it's still kicking about and it's getting scratched and dented and all of the things because I don't do fine machinist work. I do blacksmithing.
No, I get it. And that is
Mhm.
something I'm trying to figure out, especially with like Maker Camp being local to me, is more of, blacksmiths use precision tools. They do. It's just a thing, but trying to, you really don't want to have a brass square in a blacksmith shop, but a steel square is different, and I'm always thinking about those things.
I like the brass though, because it is so nice and different from everything else. And it really stands out in pictures as well.
True. Yeah.
There must be a couple of them kicking around somewhere with those unfortunate people whose natural skin oils will just leave their fingerprints into the brass like indelibly within the first
I'm
use.
sure.
They've got to be like that. You can see exactly where their hand has been because it's left their fingerprints entirely on it. That'd be great. So you mentioned that you were trained as a machinist. So what was your day job then before you?
So for this October, it'll be 30 years since I've been a machinist. So over 25, most of the time I was a machinist. I was, for a short time, I was what's called a millwright. I don't know if that is a millwright is different. Basically, I just took large pieces of equipment and aligned them very, very precisely. And that's what a millwright does. But I did that for a short time, and then I went back to machining, and I worked at this company for 10 years, and that's what kind of led me into the tool making. But I've always, since I was 12 or so, I've always been a maker. I would play, and then earlier before that, I played with Lego, and just it's always been a passion of mine.
Yeah. I think I'm fascinated, and I'm sure some of our listeners will be as well, because you're in a sense, you're in that position that I'm currently in, which is you are working very adjacent to the thing you're passionate about that you've ended up doing full time, but you're not doing it full time at that moment. So you've got all the skills, you've got access to all of the things, but you're not your own boss. You're having to work someone else's orders to a set thing and all that kind of idea. And so getting yourself into a position where you have the courage and you have the product line and the knowledge that they will sell, so that all of the stars are then aligning, and then it's kind of a point of, well, what's your reason for not taking that step?
Well, a huge thing. My wife Mackenzie, she was the one that pushed me into it. I remember it was like the late winter before that summer I started. We're upstairs, and because my shop is in my basement that has a walkout, but she said to me, she's like, this shit's got to stop. And I'm like, when your wife says that to you, you're like, what did I do? She's like, you really it's time. And the problem is my mother and my father have always worked for someone, whether it was a company or somebody else. Mackenzie had 2 parents that were very bohemian and they worked for themselves. So she grew up in that atmosphere and I didn't. So she was the one that pushed me to do it. And I think that's part of when you're in a partnership, to have that support is huge.
Absolutely.
It's massive. And that's because I was, I will take moderate risks, but I won't take huge risks. Cause in a way I've always been the breadwinner and made the majority. So I had to roll that into tool making.
Yeah.
So, we've had to live modestly, but we're not, I'm not putting miles on my car with a commute, and those little things save you money. And I'm not buying lunch or, or breakfast in the morning on the road and spending money and stuff. So those little things have slowly helped. And it's just, knock on wood, it's just continuously gotten better, and I've expanded and built my brand, and things are going well.
Yeah. That's definitely, like you say, having that support from those around you has got to be a massive thing. Well, not just support, but the kick up the bum to get you out of getting you to actually do it.
And I would, because what I was doing is I was working 5 days a week, Monday through Friday, and then every minute that wasn't consumed with my family, I was down here, and I was making it work, and the majority of the money that I was bringing in would go right back into the business. And I think that also helped me too, because I have little to no overhead right.
Yeah.
And that's part of what made it easy is if this goes south if I fail for some reason, I'm not left with a huge building that I own that I have to pay for or multiple pieces of equipment. I very slowly built this to where I basically have one machine payment, which is roughly the cost of a car payment. And then that helps. I mean, I'm working a ton, but I have yet in this 3 years, I've yet to wake up one morning and go, oh, I got to go downstairs.
Wow.
It's just, I was grumbling to you guys about taxes and stuff, but still I love what I do. And, it's just a whole different, the stress is different. That's one of the big things for me is I like having 100% of the stress on myself, because I know I'm not dealing, I'm friends with him, but my old boss, he was one of those people that he would push his stress on you to push you.
Right.
And you didn't know if that stress was valid or not. Like a perfect example is we get these parts in or broken something. We need to remake these for this X company. And we'd work all weekend. And then Monday morning, we'd all walk in and there'd be these parts sitting on the pallet. And then Tuesday and then Wednesday. And it was over and over again. So that hurts your morale. And like I said, with this, I'm wearing a million different hats, which you guys know, but I'm wearing the hat. So I've adapted easier to it, at least my personality.
Yeah. There's no one you can be frustrated with other than yourself.
Yes.
Yeah.
And machinists by nature, even though you work in a shop, mostly everybody is autonomous. They work alone and you do what you're supposed to do, and that's it. There's not a ton of teamwork, and that's not a bad thing. That's just the way the job is. So
you're dialed into your specific machine and what you're supposed to do.
You have, Monday morning or whatever, you get a blueprint and they're like, we need 5 of these, and you just go through the process, at least the places that I've worked at.
Yeah. My dad is a maintenance manager at a machine shop, and it's like, he always, that's 6 miles from my house. I'm not retiring.
Yeah.
He loves it. But he often talks about like the amount of attention the guys have to put on the tool. It's not just on what they're making, but on the machinery itself to make sure that the tool comes out correctly. And you've got pretty much a full shop to yourself. Do you have certain things that you're doing on a regular basis to keep your machines, running at the optimal?
There is maintenance of some kind, but usually you can tell, by sight or sound if something is starting to, but every so often you do have to check machines for precision and stuff. But one of the other things too is the machines that I'm using, they're called light industrial or hobby grade. I've used machines that are $500,000, and the problem is you get these guys that use the $500,000 machines, and then they walk up to the hobby machine and they're like, oh, this is a piece of crap. And it's like,
Yep.
no, you're dealing with, it's like I tell people, say you got to move I'm going to use a British term. Say you got to move a bunch of dirt. Well, you can do, if you have a lorry, you can go ahead and move a ton of dirt, or if you have a wheelbarrow, you can do it. You just have to figure out how to get there. And that's what and with my machinist background, a lot of what I did is I focused on fixturing and like how to make difficult parts in repetition and stuff. So I'll like the artistic part of me likes to make a prototype, but then the machinist part of me likes to sit and stare at it and go, how can I make 6 of these without having to stand in front of the machine? Because that's part of that. That's what CNC is. That's what the utilization is. Because you get the people that get grumpy about CNC, and it's like, you're not holding a picture up to the window and grunting and going 5, 5, and then 5, 5. It doesn't work that way. But it's utilizing that. And that's where I think I've been able to make money is knowing that. Because like a perfect example is the planes. If I was to make one plane from start to finish, it'd be 40 or 50 hours. But I make anywhere from 10 to 25, and it's 10 to 12 hours a piece because I'm batching and I have fixturing and because I might be able to sell 2 or 3 planes at the 40 or 50 hours to certain people, but I'm trying to sell to people like myself that, I have budgeted means. And so, but that's a rabbit hole,
So what you're talking about is the efficiency aspect of it, which is basically your profit margin.
Yes, exactly.
That is the only way you can make your money off that thing.
Yeah. And like I said, the fact that I've had the equipment that I've had and I've been frugal, and this is my basement shop, which, I'm not renting a building, which if you can float that and do that, that's great. But that all adds to the overhead of your costs. And that's just something to take into consideration.
Do you have like a single thing that sort of stands out, like a big revelation of like going from the hobby to the full time, and now over 3 years time, like you suddenly realize that, oh, this part of the business I never realized worked in this way?
I don't know about huge revelation, but it was like, but it was like the planes. The planes I make are the most expensive tool I make. But when you look at dollar per minute or dollar per hour, I make more money on my double squares because there's so much more customization. And that's another thing that I like to do is I'll get people like a base square is brass, and then there's steel. Brass and steel are about the same price. And then I have stainless steel, and I'll get some guys that get the bare bones brass with just a simple inlay. And then I'll get guys that get stainless steel with Damascus and pattern steel. Sorry, I don't mean to offend Rasmus, But anyway, but you'll get just crazy inlays and engraving, and sometimes it'll be $150 square, or it can be a $600 square, and everywhere in between. And that's what also helps my bottom line is offering that. And that also keeps me interested. Because if I was to just make 100 squares that were brass with walnut in them, I would just rather go back to being a full-time machinist, and just at that point I'm just making parts where people supply their own inlays. And like I have a story that I tell other people. I had a guy send me a chunk of mahogany flooring that was out of his late parents' home, and I made a whole set of squares for him. And that's just really, really, it's fulfilling.
Because now all of a sudden you've doubled down on the heirloom element of it. The wood's not particularly exciting, but every member of that family who would be likely to use one has now got something from the family home.
Yes. Yeah. And they can just even showing someone, hey, this is from, and those are the things that I enjoy and I think shine through in the tools that I make.
Yeah, I love that.
So if we talk a little bit then about the fact that you started going, as you said, self-employed or full-time round about the time as we were running our podcast episodes. So how many markets then Have you changed the amount of markets you go to? Did you start off with quite a few and you've whittled it down, or have you always done a similar amount?
Well, that was the thing is I'm trying to think. I may have done one show when I was part-time.
There was something local you went to once or twice.
Yes. Yeah, there's a local show. Yeah, it would have been the spring before I started. So I knew I was starting, but one of the things that I've noticed is social media has become more and more like walled off. Like you can't grow what you could grow 5 or 10 years ago. Things are where I would pick up a couple hundred followers a month. It's like 2 or 3 now, and you don't know if they're legit or not. That's the problem. So I was lucky. I had a woodworking show. Like I don't think I would do well selling my tools at like a craft fair or flea market. Unless somebody knows I'm coming, then I would. But there's a lot of people that walk by my booth and go, like, it was this show this past weekend, and I always get them, and I'll get a guy, and he's like, no one's going to pay that money for woodworking tools. And I didn't hear it. My cousin heard it. So I'm getting a little bristly as I get older, so I might have said something. Apparently they are. And it's just where I am it's not necessarily a poor region, but it's not, there's towns and cities that are, have more money, but it's not like a very urban, like it's not like Pittsburgh or, like Manhattan where there's money, and that's, so what I've had to do is rely on online sales. So I try to do like 2 or 3 shows a year somewhat around the country to hand out the business card, because there's 2 reasons. I take crappy photos. I'm not a good photographer. And to hold a tool is different than to see a picture. And it's no different than a turn bowl or a blacksmith piece or a piece of pottery. Yeah. When you hold that thing, you notice little things like a chatoyance in a wood or just the heft of it. And that's the one thing that I get pride in, is when someone picks up a plane or a square, they drop their hands like, holy cow, this thing is heavy. And they really like it. So it's more of a grassroots trying to get my business cards in people's hands, because I joke, I'll talk a lot of people out of buying something because they're like, well, I don't know if this inlay is great. And I'm like, if you wait 6 months or 3 months, I'm doing a batch and you can order whatever you want. And so I don't do a ton of shows, because the other thing too is I'm not in the shop. And this is kind of how this works. This is like, I'm very slowly trying, like normally I work 7 days a week because I love it. At the end of the day, I'm not like, you'll be tired, but it's just, I enjoy it. But I've realized that I can't keep this up. So I'm like going to try to maybe Sunday, just stay out of the shop. And
I would recommend that.
So I'm getting there, and I'm aware of it, and I think that's a big part of it. But I have to be here making tools because it's just me. It's not like I have someone making, running a machine in the background where, hey, I'm going to a show for a weekend, make these parts, and when I come back, we'll continue with it. So I have to be very careful on how I do that. And then there's hotel and, which you guys talk about all the time in the podcast. It's just, there's all these ancillary costs. And with this show is a larger woodworking show, and it's 25 minutes from my house. So I basically just paid a booth fee and that's it.
Yeah. And at that point, you're kind of definitely losing money if you're not showing up, because it is so cheap for you to go there and show yourself, and you're only losing the shop time.
Yep.
Which,
and I do okay there. It's worthwhile to do it. And, but online sales are like my bread and butter. And in like, because usually what I'll do is I'll make tools in batches. So I'll have an announcement. Hey, I'm making, like in a couple weeks, I'm going to start taking orders for block planes again. So I'll have an email that says, I'm doing this, and then show up at the website at noon on whatever day, and then you put down your deposit, and then I work with you to build exactly what you want.
Yeah. I was just going to ask, so if social media has shut you off, obviously you've got a reasonable following on there from before, but if social media
Yes.
shut you off, you're not attending many shows. Like, how are you getting your customers? Is it purely from like in effect your mailing list from the past? Or?
The mailing list is the big thing, but I mean, I have a decent following on Instagram, and that is kind of, and it's a slow burn. It's just, you're not, you see some of these woodworkers with 300,000 followers, and you're like, it's how, you know, and they did it back when everybody was just following, but yeah, it's I was lucky to I had an article done on me in a national publication here that helped a lot, and I got a lot of different people. You could tell it was people that weren't social media savvy. It was more emails, like I joke, it's the emails with the husband and wife name, you know. So you just know that they're not on Instagram or whatever. So that's what I'm trying to do is with that social media slowdown, I'm trying to do more and more but I do have a decent email list following. And that's the other thing is I only need, you know, a certain percentage of those people and that's just part of, you know, I breathe into a bag every time I do a tool sale. I'm always, no one's going to buy anything. I'm a loser. And I just, you know, I'm just, and you start to see the little sales, and you get the initial people that show right up, and then it's just boom, 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 you know, and just over time, and knock on, you know, like, I don't want to keep using it, but it just, knock on wood, it just keeps people like my stuff enough that it's keeping me in business. But also I'm always trying to expand and make different things, because that's another hang up that I have is market saturation. Like, is there only room for so many squares or so many planes? And so I'm trying, and it also just keeps my interest, you know, where I'm not making the same thing over and over.
You're doing very well. It's almost like I gave you my list of questions before we started, which I didn't.
Like I said, I've listened. So
because that's flowing right into my next one, which was like, do you consciously split your time between manufacturing and product development? Or is that dictated by, I've got X orders I need to complete by this date, and then you can kind of allocate a window of something?
I always want that. I always have this romantic thought that like one thing I've purposely done, and I know you guys are heavy into, is like Christmas rush. And I did that as a woodworker for gifts. So every Christmas Eve, I'd be sick. I'd have a cold. I would just run myself down. So that's the one thing that I do not do with my tools. Occasionally I'll have a handful of tools. I'm like, hey, they'll be delivered for Christmas, but I don't do orders. Yeah. And I always have this like idea that December 1st to January 1st, I'm going to take the month off, and I'm just going to clean the shop, and I'm going to do research and development, and I'm going to make it, and it doesn't happen. What happens is I'm always behind. And then some gremlin in my head says, you need to make this right now. And I just vomit out my idea, and it interrupts everything, and I get it out, and then I take a picture of it, and I'll get a couple people like, when are you making those? When are you making those? And figure out when to. But that's how it is usually it's like I get interrupted right in the middle, and it's like, no, you have to do this. You've been doing repetition too long. You gotta have some fun, and then I roll right back into it.
So I think it's going to be quite reassuring for listener base to realize that, yeah, you can go full time. Yes, you can make a living out of it, because Tony, you have a family you're having to look after, and all that kind of thing, the mortgage and everything else. But also, yes, you will still have exactly the same problems as you have when you're doing this part time, which is you can't stop your brain chemistry suddenly firing at you and going, oh no, you just don't want to do this anymore. Now you have to walk away and do something completely different. Even though we know you've got a deadline, and we know that, you know, this will just suddenly interrupt your flow. It will still happen. I was going to reference earlier as well, I can't remember if it's a meme or a reel or something that people are doing a lot at the moment, or I'm certainly seeing a lot, about people saying like, oh, I'm so glad I quit my 9 to 5 so I could do my 167 hour a week job and be my own boss. And it's like, it's a tongue-in-cheek joke, because the reality is that for the vast majority of us who want that, even though we can't see it until you're there, we accept the fact that Yeah, that's the trade-off, is that you don't ever get to fully switch your brain off. You don't get to walk in and moan to your partner about your boss because you are that boss. You know, you don't get to sort of have any of those things where you can vent and then just go and do a little thing in the workshop as your hobby, because that is your job.
Yep. Yeah, because I think it was last summer. There was a big thing that there was going to be a massive copper and brass shortage, and that affected me. And because of all the AI, you know, they're building all these chips, everything requires copper wires, everything. Yeah. And 3 a.m, I wake up, and I'm one of those people that when I go to sleep, train could go through the house and I don't wake up. But 3 a.m, I'm waking up going, am I going to be able to make squares this year? And squares are my bread and butter. And, you know, and sure enough, it worked out fine. And prices fluctuate. That's just part of the game. But yeah, you'd have that, you know, it's just, it is consuming, and you have to realize that. But if you enjoy it, you take those little, you know, hits.
On that note, did that sort of spark you a bit to try to find what's the next bread and butter item going to be?
Well, yeah, I'm diversifying a lot, because there's like, one of the things I do too is there's a handful of tool makers that I've met over the years, and I will do machine work for them, because a lot of my stuff is done on milling machines, and I have a CNC lathe that just sits for most of the time, because like I'll make like knobs for something, but I can make 100 square knobs in an afternoon. It sits a lot. So I've made these connections where I can fill my time helping them, but also I'm getting to the point where, and then this is where Insecure Tony comes in. It's like, well, if no one buys your tools, they're going to keep buying that guy's tools. So you should keep making these parts for this guy, and not and just ignore all these ideas that you keep having. So this year I'm starting to, I'm very slowly learning to say no, and I'm going to and because I'm also meeting other people that want to do things with me that are much more interesting. Like there's a local luthier that close to me, and he does really amazing work, and he has an idea for a couple tools, and it's beneficial for both of us, but I only have so much time in the day. So I have to kind of, that's my next battle, is trying to make time for my company and myself rather than just make parts for someone else. It's not a lot of work, but I just have to realize that if I produce a tool and it makes more money an hour than these knobs I'm making for this guy, I have to push myself over that hill and learn and say no. And
it's the growth of your business, because right at the beginning you say yes to everything to make sure that there's revenue and there's income, and then you get to a point where it sounds like you've had that revelation of, oh no, if I make 3 of this tool that are mine, I'm going to make a lot more money, because you've got to that point where you know they will sell and all of that kind of thing. So sounds like you're in a good place, but you're also at that, it's that next step up, isn't it? Where it's uncomfortable for a little bit until everything settles down again.
I think that my next growth is either just have a little just pile of guys that I work for and just say no to everybody, or I just clean house and just make for myself. But because like, speaking of the lathe, that's the thing that runs the least. So I'm trying to think of more round tools that I could make, because then that fulfills that. And traditionally off a lathe, there's less handwork that's involved than, like, because that's the other thing too, is when the tools come off the CNC, they're not like pristine and shiny and brush finish and all that. So
I have a thought about a blacksmithing thing that might be CNC lathe worthy.
Well, before you get into that, you can talk about that in the after show, and then let Heidi say what she was going to say, because she put her hand up.
Sorry, put mine in the after show as well.
These are all requests for Tony to do exactly what he said he's cutting down on.
No, not cutting down on, just ideas for tools that can, you know, kind of belly out the work that he has, and kind of
that's another thing.
The lathe.
Well, that's another thing too, is I'm not hung up on just making woodworking tools. Like I made this little knife, and my cousin and I are constantly trying to figure out how you pronounce it. It's a It's a bread. I think it's pronounced bread lame, like lame, like normal.
The lame.
I've heard that too because it's French. So we're like, or lamb or whatever. And then we
Oh,
Googled
that's
it
for
one time and it
storing
just,
the sourdoughs, is it?
yes. And
Right.
I made it because my cousin Paul, who's like, we're close to the same age and he helps me at all the shows. He's like my barker. I'm very introverted until you ask me, what is the steel you used in this plane? And then I just jabber for 45 minutes and the person's slowly walking away. But Paul helps break that ice. And his wife is very big into sourdough and baking. And so I decided to make one and I took a picture of it. And I had a handful of people that, hey, would you make these? And I make like a batch of them every 6 months or so. And they're really good to have at shows because a lot of makers also are bakers, and then people's partners, it's a good gift and it's a good apology gift that I just spent $250 on this square, but hey, I got you this, bread knife. And so that's the other thing is I'm not super hung up on just making. I kind of just want to make what piques my interest. Yeah. And, like whether it's pottery or my wife, her and her friend own they get mad at me because I say it basically it's a yarn store. They call it a fiber store. They have wool and yarn and it's all local and it's like her passion right now. And like they've been doing well at it. And so I look at those and I'm trying to figure out little things that I can do to help them. Cause again, that's the maker in me is I want to do a little bit of everything.
Yeah. I mean, I'm straight away sat there thinking like, oh, I can do like, I can turn little weights and I can turn the darning mushrooms and all of, there's just this whole list. As soon as someone says, oh, this is what I do, my brain just starts cataloging. These are things I could make and offer you. Is this good or bad? Yeah. All that kind of thing. I think it's the problem solving, isn't it? It's the problem solving element.
It is. And I think that's why when I was a machinist, I was pushed into fixturing because I was good at it. And it's like, hey, we need to make 10 of these really efficient. So I could sit and I was lucky that I was around people that were, smart and just, would help with problem solving. And it's just rubbed off on me.
I love that because I'm a very process oriented person in my day job with, project management. You're trying to figure out like who should handle this part before this part and, what can parallel path and, what can I be doing over here that can be simultaneously done over here. And that kind of like moved into my studio presence too. It was like, okay, well, while I'm throwing this, what should I throw first? Because that takes the longest to dry and requires assembly and everything that I can put on the racks. And then, I can throw something that has no assembly and that I can do at the end and then put it to the side. And while those other things are drying, they're ready to go once I'm done throwing these things that don't have so much hand holding. And it's like that whole brain work that I'm doing just like stimulates something in me that makes it fun. And when I try and explain that to non-like-minded people, they're like, that fucking stresses me out.
Yeah.
Don't even talk to me about it. I don't want to hear about it. And I'm like, oh, but it is just,
it's amazing. I went and did it today. Like I've been struggling with motivation to go out in the workshop recently. I don't know why, or whatever reason, even though I've got events coming up. I've gone out and I've done commissions because commissions are there. But I've got events coming up I need stock for and I just haven't got. And I went out today fully intending, because it was a bank holiday today, fully intending to clear out the wood store, reorganize it, tidy up a load of stuff, and then pack some stuff away. I dragged out a swage block and an anvil that have been sat in my workshop for far too long. And, and then like moved some stuff around. A colleague came around to pick up some sanding discs. And then my brain went, you now need to make things. And I'd completely completely disassociated and made me forget that I was going to have a tidy up day. And I just went around going like, oh, that scrap of wood's about the right size for a light pull. And then this is, and you just, okay, well, this is the shape I think I want. Let's go and make one. Let's do a couple of practice runs to make sure I got the form right in my head. Okay, I've done that. Right, so now let's go, right, they all need to be these dimensions. Let's go and make a load of blocks. Right now, let's go and drill them all. And it was to the extent that The drill bit I use is a stepped drill bit. So not like one of the cone ones, but it's got like a 3mm drill bit for about an inch, and then it goes to a 6mm. Okay. So, and the end of it isn't a brad point. It's a metal cutting bit. So it's quite delicate and quite easily sort of snap off because you're drilling into end grain of timber. And so I was even at the point of going like, right, I need to organize my timber by density so that I can make sure that all of the soft ones are done before I run the risk of snapping this bit off in the denser ones at the end. And I was like, kept swapping around. Oh, I think that's getting a bit hot. It's a bit, all right, let's put one of the soft ones in that I've got left back in there to sort of ease it off. So I'm still, and it was just this thing. And I was quite cheerful. I was like, oh yeah, because, I mean, it's a weird thing like that, rather than just, here's a pile of wood, just drill holes in it. It was like, no, they have to be like this.
Yeah.
And I was so much happier. And then I took them off and I think I only actually made 7 in the end to start with, but I knew I'd got the form right, and I know I've got the stock right, and I know I can just go out, turn the lathe on and just carry on and it will be fine. And so I think you're right, Heidi. You say all of this to people who are non-creative, but also I would take it a step further, who I would even include artists in that group, because we're talking process. We're talking like potentially reproduction process or, production line process, which all 4 of us here have kind of got elements of that, which we have to do at various points in time. And that will just stress people out who like to flow in the moment, or they're making a one-off piece, or who have no creativity to at all. Sorry?
My husband.
Yes. No, I don't know what it is. And apologies to anyone who's listening who feels picked on or anything like that, because we're not sort of criticizing you guys at all. It's completely different minds. I would love to be able to go and go, right, today I've got 3 weeks and I'm just going to make a thing, and it's going to tell a story about whatever, and then just conceptualize and go. Can't do it. It just, I have it, that gate is very firmly welded shut and barred and whatever. And I just can't seem to access it at the moment. So
I have a question to take it back to Tony's origin of like the block plane, right? So thinking about all of the different parts and pieces of a plane, it feels overwhelming to me, for that to be like what you started with, like what you were like, I'm going to make that, and that's going to be, my product that I make. Can you kind of talk about like the first block plane that you made, and was it just one, or were you making like each part multiple times?
Well, I'll do just my little Marvel origin story. So when I'm working at this machine shop, and one of the things that they do is they let you use the equipment after hours, which isn't unheard of. Because no business owner in the right mind wants someone using a $200,000 machine to make motorcycle parts or whatever, But his thought process was, the more you're using those machines, the better you're going to get, the more money you're going to make me, which he did benefit from. And he's the owner of this company is one of my biggest champions. He buys tools from me all the time. He's not a woodworker. It's kind of like a proud papa thing, I think.
Yeah.
So I made myself a branding iron, just my little logo, and you heat it up with a torch. And at the same time, I made one that said Duresta with a stencil on it. And I put it in a drawer because I was terrified. I'm like, I can't send it. This guy's a celebrity. I can't send it to him. But 6 months go by, and I finally get the courage to ask Jimmy, do you have and he, of course, Jimmy being Jimmy, is like, oh yeah, it's this. And I send it to him, and he sends me this message, and just look great. And then all of a sudden it's popping up in his videos. And so I start making branding irons for people. And that was my first introduction to working with customers.
Okay.
Which you can laugh. It's like I would get these people that they'd send me their logo, and it would look like Pac-Man. And it was supposed to be like a mural on the Sistine Chapel. And I'm like, I can't do anything. Well, my daughter made it for me 20 years ago, and some obsolete Corel. And so eventually I was doing that, but I was kind of phasing back. It was just a little bit of side money, that I could buy wood, because I was a woodworker at home. And I did this podcast called MakerCast, and it was one of the first making podcasts, and it was a one-on-one interview style. And this guy, John, was very nice, and he got burnt out and stopped doing it. But for one of the things he was doing is he had like maybe 20 episodes or something. So he wanted to do a giveaway where everybody made something. And some of his guests were like YouTube woodworkers, like Mark Spagnolo, I don't know if you guys Wood Whisperer, and Jimmy, and then like these machine shop owners. And then he asked me, and I'm like, I'm just a peon. Like, what am I going to do? So just driving to work, and this is how I design, just driving to work. I'm like, I've always wanted to make a plane because that's just a really cool thing.
Yeah.
And just driving back and work and just slowly letting this fester in my head. And I was like, well, I'd like to do the dovetail like the old Norris style planes that were peened and dovetailed. And so this little black plane, you know, it comes out of my head, and I design it and I made it, and it was in the giveaway, and actually one of the people in our community won the giveaway. So it was neat because I knew the guy that won it. He was very appreciative. And so that was in September. And then there was, at the end of September, it was when there was still there are fairly large woodworking shows, but this was a really big one. It was in the middle. It was in Southern Ohio. And I was there, and a YouTuber by the name of Jay Bates, who's a woodworker, he pulls me aside and he's like, I really like that plane. Are you going to make some? And I'm like, I think I might make a dozen of them or something. And I did. And I made for like friends and people that knew me on Facebook. And so I did like an initial run of 12, and I sent his away. And me being neurotic at the time, which I still am, but I checked the tracking because I'm sending this thing into the ether. That's a lot of work. And so I see that he got it on a Friday, and I see that he gets it, and I don't hear anything Friday. I don't hear anything Saturday. I don't need him kissing my ass. I just want to say, hey, Tony,
tell me you got it. Tell me you got it.
And just thank Sunday it comes, or Sunday goes by, nothing. And I'm just like, I don't want to bother the guy. So Monday morning, I just kind of messaged him on Instagram. I'm like, hey, Jay, just check and make sure you got that plane open. He goes, yep, I'm doing an unboxing video. So I told another maker friend that had a business. His name is Joel Crawford. Heidi knows Joel.
I know
Joel too.
Yeah.
Joel is a sweetheart, and he's very business oriented. I told him just offhanded, he's like, you need to make a storefront. You need something.
You need to be prepared.
Yes. So he made me a little Etsy storefront, and he's like, how many do you want to do? And I think I'm like, I want to do 3 runs of 10. And I was like, I'm going to sell 5 of these. And he released the video at 6 p.m. By 6:30, I was sold out on Etsy, and people emailing me. And then that just, because that's the thing is I am so appreciative, because there's hard work is part of it, doing a quality product part of it, but there's a lot of luck involved. There's a lot of luck involved. And there was a lot of lightning in the bottle moments where Paul Jackman would buy a square, and you just see it every once in a while in a video. And that's part of how my base has gone too, is where did you get that square? Or Jimmy made a canoe, and he planed almost the whole goddamn canoe with the block plane that I gave him just out of a friendship. And I'm like, why are you doing this? And he's like, I like it. It's heavy. It works great. And but it's that exposure. And you know, because I know tool makers that are just as good, if not better than me, and they don't have the not the revenue, because I'm not making money over this, but the exposure that I have. So I've tried to be I try to put that karma back out, you know, with supporting other people. And I've had a couple guys that, you know, there's a guy down in Florida, and he had an idea for a square, and he's like, if you don't want to talk to me, I'm totally fine. And I'm like, it's a really big pond, and if you're going to do this better than me, you deserve it. I'll make something else. But there was no correlation. But he had never machined before, and for the past, month, every other day, I field a small phone call or something, and I'm helping him build his thing. And I'm very big into karma, just trying to put positivity back out, and not just, hide all my secrets. Because if people really want to figure something out, they're going to figure it out.
Yeah.
So,
it's the reciprocal relationship with the community, isn't it?
Yes. Yeah. And there are people that, meet me at a show, and I've had people talk to me and they're like, my passion and just talking about making tools sells them on it. And I'm, like I said, I'm not a good salesman. I usually am quiet but they know that I'm not just making 15 widgets just to make money. And, I'm very invested in this.
I love it.
I think the first time, I can't remember if it was first or second time I saw one of your hand planes was actually after Jenny had engraved it.
Yes. Yep.
Which is probably where a lot of people.
Yes. And that was a plane that Izzy Swan bought. Izzy bought that. And then he told me he was going to have Jen engrave it. And she was really nervous because she hadn't done planes yet. And he told her, he's like, I'll just buy another one. And I actually messaged her because we have kind of a close business relationship, because a lot of the stuff not a lot, but a fair amount of the stuff that I do usually gets sent to her to be engraved or whatever. And I told her, I'm like, if you run this thing through a chipper and it disintegrates, I'll make you a new one. Don't worry about it. And she just,
Oh, that's so nice.
But because
that's great.
Because that's the other thing is you get the people that are like pretending to steal something, and I'm like, I'll just make another one. Don't, if you need to run off with it, run off with it. It's a joke, but
I think it's really interesting to see how humble you are in the sense of saying, there's been a huge amount of luck involved. I think when you've got a product that has been put in the hands of someone who is a woodworker, who knows what they're doing and looks at it, and they can see that they want it, regardless of whether or not their intention is to do an unboxing video to try and big you up or anything else like that. The point being is they've seen that and they've gone, do you know what? That's actually really nice. Because you're talking about the period in time where that kind of a woodworker, if they were a different personality, could go to you and say, hey, I really like one of those planes. Will you make me one for free? And then I'll do an unboxing video, and then you'll get all of this.
And that's one thing too. I think that no one's ever tried to take advantage of me. I have people that I send stuff because of genuine friendships, but I'm also like, you don't, this isn't me saying, hey, put this on video, and it's like I said, it's the positivity, and thankfully I haven't had someone that, I'll get like you referenced the AI, thing. Oh, let's collaborate. And it's like, this isn't a thing. So.
Yeah.
I think one of the best gifts I ever gave Ben was presenting him with his square that you and I traded off. We traded off pottery.
Yeah.
And he was just so tickled pink. And he was of the mind of like, I'm afraid to use it. But then he did use it and he's like, oh, it's so beautiful. And it's so nice. And he uses it quite a bit. It's got a special place on his wall.
That's kind of the thing I remember when like my education, I joke with people, I went to college for 3 hours. Done. Because to me, it was just an extension of high school. And it's just like, I was going to be a mechanical engineer. And I remember I ended up in my father's office. He worked at a hardware store. He just recently retired, but I remember I ended up in his office practically. I was in tears. I was just like, I don't know what to do. I don't want to sit behind a desk. Meanwhile, he's sitting behind a desk, but he understood. And I was like, I want to do something with my hands. And he's like, okay. He's like, we'll just pump your brakes and we'll figure it out. And I ended up finding that there was a machining course that catered to high school students, but there was also an adult program too. So I got into there, and I remember getting my first machinist tools. It was just a micrometer and a set of calipers. And I remember how nice they were. And I remember holding him, and there was this little extra layer of confidence that I was going to be a better machinist. And that's what I feel, because I will tell people there's just, you can make whatever you want with dollar store tools. It's not there's pros and cons to everything, but there's an extra layer of pride and, when you hold something really well made.
Yeah.
Yes.
And it does make you better at making things.
Yeah.
Like the like you say, you can make loads of stuff with stuff that you've bought really, really cheap tools. But when you get better, you'll suddenly realize, like when someone hands you a tool that is significantly better made, and then you go to do the same process and you go, why is this so much easier? Oh, because the tool's not shit.
Yeah.
You know, I'm not having to compensate. I'm not having to resharpen the cheap blade every 10 passes. I'm not having to like check the square with another square to make sure that it is actually still square, or all of that kind of stuff. Obviously woodworking focus there, but yeah, I think that is, I'm really pleased that has come out of the conversation, is the fact that you're in effect trying to pass on that feeling that you felt right at the beginning.
Yeah, it's
of,
great.
hey guys, you know, you've got this. Like, yeah, you're going to make some mistakes, but that's how you learn. So let's give you the best boost up that we possibly can by giving you a tool that is reliable and is accurate and is going to help you go along and make you feel that bit more professional.
And it looks sexy.
Yeah.
Really
Yeah, 100%. I find it fascinating looking at your tools, because having worked in the past for a guitar maker who also made hand tools, all of the timbers that you're, generally speaking, unless it's, you know, hereditary mahogany like we mentioned earlier, all of the timbers you're using are all stuff that I would work on as like a guitar top or a guitar neck or a fretboard or something that is super high value. This is only ever going to make the value of the guitar better, because look at it, it is sexy. You can use this really nice expensive timber on the everyday stuff. You see what I mean? It was things like we'd run out of a batch of the timber we would normally use for file handles, and we literally had no what I would call mundane timber left. And the owner of the business said, well, look, we've got this small block of undersized rippled sycamore. Use that and we'll put an extra value on them, and we'll call those heirloom tools. And it was literally, we needed to make some tools to go out. There were a couple of guys who they'd been waiting for a while and we hadn't been able to get the process. So we upgraded them by making them a really nice tool handle, and then ran out a small batch. And then, exactly as you've almost said, Tony, you've kind of gone that, oh, well, actually, now we want that one. We want that one. It's another £15 to put a different piece of wood on that's really sexy. Oh, well, I'll pay that.
Yep.
Because I want my tools
that's
to look
part
sexy.
of, you know, and that's a woodworking thing that I have to be like, you see woodworkers that hoard wood. I mean, I hoard little, you know, 1-inch cubes. I have to be very careful on, you know, I have just a certain amount of space for wood, but yeah, that's one of the things that, you know, is, and that's what also sets people's tools apart from other people's. You know, I have mine with this timber in it, and that's mine, you know.
What piece of advice, Tony, would you give to our listeners? Like, what if I'm not going to limit you to one piece, like, of advice, but we're talking, obviously, a lot of people who listen are either just hobbyists and they're just selling at their markets, or maybe they're wanting to one day go full time, or maybe they're already there. But is there a piece or a couple of bits of advice that you would suggest, other than listen to this podcast, that would help them, or help, you know, give them confidence or inspire them?
I don't know. I'm not big on wise words, but just, you know, put your heart into it. If you put passion into something and you really, you know, it may take multiple tries or multiple iterations of something, but it's a stateside thing. Don't mail it in, you know. It's like, just try, put your passion into it, and people will see that. And that's what I've noticed, you know, is just people will tell when you're passionate about something, or you're just making, you know, X amount of widgets to sell at a fair or whatever, which is fine. That's how commerce works, but that might set you apart from the others.
Yeah. What's the thing that makes people stop and look properly? Yeah.
Yeah.
Because you made something with passion and difference. Cool. I think that's a superb bit of advice. I think that would be great. We'll have to start like the book of quotes.
If I may add on a little bit to that, because I seem to recall Mike Rowe talking about ages ago that you shouldn't really follow your passion, but you should always bring it along wherever you're going. So like if you want to start doing a thing because you have really passionate about that thing, then you might have lost focus on how to run that business, what actually gives you joy from it. But if you're able to just realize, no, I find joy in making beautiful tools and see them used, then that's a really broad category of work. Like, you could do anything. Whereas if you were to go like, no, I only want to make wood planes.
Yeah.
then you don't want to do the squares where you actually make the most of your money, right?
Yes.
If you get that
Yeah.
little bit of a nuance to it.
There's an asterisk by it.
Yeah, I mean, but your point is still really valid. Like you should always try to do that little bit extra, because if you want to be a small tradie and compete with big guys that do mass produce things, you can't try to compete them at their own game. You need to redefine the game you're playing by doing things extra, by doing it beautifully, by doing it really well made.
Yeah, and that's how I can survive with the bigger tool makers that I'm in with.
Yeah. It's also why I've just made some light balls out of Indian rosewood. You don't get much more extra than that, really. It's completely unnecessary, but it's like, they're about the right size. I haven't got anything else to use those for. Yeah, excellent. Well, thank you very much, Tony. Sorry, Heidi, have you got anything else you wanted to chip in and say before we... Excellent.
Nope, save it for the after show.
Absolutely. So we're going to the after show now. So for those of you who haven't heard an episode before and didn't realize, so we have a Patreon, Patreon. We have a Patreon account, and we do have after show episodes. They are behind a paywall. There are different tiers of paywall. You get the same things for every tier. So you don't have to go for the top tier. You can go for the bottom tier. Bottom tier is $3 a month. You can pay for the 1 month. You can listen to all of the after shows. You can cancel again. I'm terrible at selling us as a business. Absolutely fine. But if you did want to hear more from Tony, and I'm sure you would, then you can find us on the Patreon, Setting Up Shop. Shop is spelled SHOPPE. As always, you can find all of us at Setting Up Shop. That is setting_up_shop on Instagram. You can find me at tarrant.co.uk. You can find Rasmus at Rasmus Loen, Loen. You can find Heidi at whitehall_pottery, and you can find Tony at Hillview_tool. Thank you very much, everyone, for listening. If I'm right, Rasmus, this is the end of this season, isn't it?
It is. Actually.
So it is the end of the season. We ended it on a high note with Tony being our guest. We will be recording another season unless in the after show we have a massive falling out and the guys will tell me that we can't do it. So there's another reason for potentially listening to see whether or not that happens. And we will announce when that will be launched later on, because we've got to have that conversation and figure it all out.
Well, we did talk about doing maybe an in-between Q&A episode.
Yes. I'm so glad that I prepped properly for this one. Yeah, we were talking about, it's long overdue that we would do a question and answer session that we would potentially do. Did we say we were going to do that live, or did we say we were going to? Is that a whole other conversation? Anyway, we can worry about the format of it. When you have heard this episode, we would love it if you guys would reach out to us via email, info@settingupshop.com, or through Instagram DMs to any of the three of us, or to the podcast Instagram. Send us questions. The questions can be about anything, literally anything, preferably to do with buying and selling and hobbies and all of that kind of stuff. But they can be about anything. If you get too personal with them, they might just not get answered, or maybe they will and you'll be surprised and won't like the answer. So we will leave that up to you. Please send us some questions. If we don't get enough, then we won't have the episode and we'll come up with something else. But we'd love to hear from you guys. We'd love to hear questions and suggestions and all of that kind of good stuff. The only thing that we'd probably have an exception to that rule is if you were an Irishman and you want to send us a bad joke. We don't want to receive that email. You send those to other podcasts enough as it is. So please send us some questions. Love you all. Thank you very much for listening. And we look forward to having conversations with you in the future, and for all of your lovely messages. Thank you all. And thank you again, Tony, for attending.
Thank you, guys.
Bye-bye.
See you.